But while we're doing that, I'll introduce our first two speakers on either side of me. We've got Nick Rosier
Hi.
and Peter Jevons, and they're from a company called Gather. And they're going to be talking to you today about the top 5 things in defining the future of the event experience and technology. So hand over to them, and see you again in about half an hour to go through the questions.
Cool. Are you hearing me? Okay, cool. All right, good. Well, hi everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming on nice and early to Event Tech Live on day 1 of the physical event. As we said, so my name's Nick. This is Peter. We're going to be running through a bit of a presentation today around top 5 things that we think are going to be defining the future of event tech. We're going to do it in the context of apps, in the context of data, in the context of what makes a good experience in shows today. And I guess the place that we come from as Gather is a little bit around the agency side of things. So Gather was sort of born out of an agency software. So we like to sort of look not just at the software side, like is the stuff working well, is it all sort of running smoothly, but also like do we understand what's making a good show for a brand? Do we understand the creative side of things as well? So, in no particular order, we're going to sort of throw it to you guys first, do a bit of a poll at the beginning and see what you think the order of these top 5 things might be. So we're looking at regulation, things like, data, security, being able to stream in different places. We're looking at engagement, is the event going to keep people's attention? Is it going to be exciting? Is it going to pull the pants off you and make you walk off after 10 minutes? We're looking at creativity. Can you actually create real, true, bespoke experiences in today's sort of virtual hybrid event market? And how can you take existing things which are built and brands spend loads of money on, and then actually bring that to play online in a hybrid event in a physical setting like this? Then end-to-end journey is kind of key. A lot of people are talking about not just the in-event experience, but what's happening before, what's happening afterwards. Can we sort of track the attendee journey and really make them sort of feel the warm and fuzzies from the very first interaction to the very last interaction? Is it consistent? And then ROX, a return on experience rather than just pure return on investment. Are the dollars you're spending on the experience side of things really sort of trackable? Are you really seeing a sort of return beyond just I'm capturing X number of leads, I'm having X number of meetings? So you head over to the QR code, and we've got a bit of an internet problem at Excel today, so we're going to see if the poll's working. But if some of you have managed to scan the code, and feel free to spend a minute filling in some answers. So I'm not sure if we're getting live data. We did a little test earlier, which is why we got 1 result. But if we don't get results for the internet, we'll come back to it at the end and see if the Ethernet here is working. So, and if not, we'll share the results afterwards online and send a nice message to you all, and you can see what you all thought. But hopefully we might see a bit of a change from the beginning to the end, and might have changed your opinions. So, not sure if that's going to update, so we'll skip forward. So first point, creativity. It seems like an obvious one, but again, we come from an agency sort of background, Peter from the software world, and the point is, there's a lot of stuff out there which can start to feel quite generic. Shell schemes, we all know and love them from the virtual physical world, and there's a bunch of them here today, and they're great. We use them a ton. But the problem is, in the virtual space, do you start to force people into a sort of one-size-fits-all model, which can detract from the brand? If I'm Nike, if I'm Adidas, if I'm Airbus, do I really want to have this generic package when I spend millions of dollars every year on marketing and have incredible websites, incredible physical spaces, run incredible launch events, whatever? The minute I go into sort of a lot of virtual platforms out there, it can feel a little bit like a box I can stick a logo on. So how can we start to break that down? And are you actually getting the best for your brands? Are brands getting the best exposure? And kind of with that is the idea of being able to reuse existing content I mentioned at the beginning. Again, there's a ton of really, really great experiences out there which can be built in apps, on desktop solutions. We're looking at game engine content out there that can really bring spaces to life, bring products to life. But is there really a solution out there which allows you to integrate this stuff well, that allows you to sort of present it well? Are you making a compromise every time you want to sort of reuse that content? And are brands really getting the best they can get from the solutions out there? And so having a platform which allows you to reuse stuff, to integrate things that exist, to save money so you're not creating things every single time is really key. And so that's what we believe in. And along with that, it's all very well having a platform, but software providers are keen to get people in the door, but then they're quick to walk off and say, great, good luck, run your events, do your stuff, we'll see you later in our customer success meeting and hope it went well, But actually sort of joining dots and saying, okay, here are the tools to do it, here's your blank canvas. Right, now here's a group of trusted partners, trusted agencies who know the technology, who know what delivering good virtual content looks like or good hybrid content looks like. Having that network you can go to say, right, you're trying to do a product launch, these people are your ones. You're trying to do a sort of virtual hybrid conference, these guys have done really great work and they're innovative in that space and not just going to get, the same sort of experience. So that's really, really key. You're going to be able to trust the people you're working with, not just from the sort of technical tools, because that's the first step in the journey. Having this sort of partner network is really key. And hopefully seeing more and more agencies actually saying, you know what, I'm not just going to use what my clients are using, I'm going to have a trusted sort of software platform of choice. I'm going to go to these guys, learn it inside out, make sure my creatives know it, make sure the account managers and the product managers know it backwards, and then we're going to run really efficient, really well-designed and really well-produced content. So that's kind of key. It's a little bit about creativity there. So I'm going to hand over to Peter now to talk about end-to-end experience.
Event experience.
I don't think we can hear you yet. We'll wait to get a microphone.
There we go. Sure. Is that better? Oh, I think you can hear me now. Yeah? Is that okay? Great. Okay. So I'm Peter Jevons. Good to meet you all. So one of the other aspects of the top 5 things in terms of the future of event tech is what we call the end-to-end experience. And again, those of you that are coming along to the event today will have your own view of how well the process was managed from the point you got your initial invitation to the post-event follow-up in terms of the data you get in terms of the experience itself, in terms of who attended, which sessions did they come to. So I wanted to give a couple of examples of real-world examples of an end-to-end life cycle experience, and then talk again how that relates to software specifically. So in terms of the first example, I'll talk about Virgin Atlantic. So for those of you that travel internationally and fly around, you may be familiar with this example, but a number of years ago, Virgin did something different to enhance their travellers' experience. So at the time, all of their competitors were focusing more and more on improving, particularly for business class travellers, improving the experience for those travellers. So in the plane, more gadgets, better food, all those good things. But what Virgin realised was the actual experience for a traveller was not just about when they got onto the plane. What they actually, the whole experience evolved when they left home, how they got to the airport, how they got through the airport, then the flight, and then when they got to the other end, how they get to their destination. So they changed their experience for their travellers to an end-to-end experience. So from the moment you step out your door to the point you get to your business meeting, they extended that experience. I think that's a really good example of thinking about the full life cycle of your experience, not just the flight bit. So that's an example of that experience. Another one which is sort of bringing it closer to the exhibitions world, some of you may have seen Disney's recent Magic Bands campaign, and Nick was telling me they spent over $1 billion before launching this concept. And look it up, it's on Google if you want to go and look at the detail. But instead of just creating a band, getting some people to go to a theme park and seeing if that helped them to get onto the rides that they wanted to go onto, they spent a lot of money checking out how easy it is to receive those bands at home, how easy it is to travel to a location. Everything you can think of in terms of the experience, they have built into that process to make sure that when you sign up to that and subscribe to that, you're getting a world-beating experience. If I bring that back to event management software, even though the Gather brand has only been launched in the market relatively recently, the actual concepts and the software, some of the key elements of the software, came out of an experience of one of our partner Two Heads executives' experience at the Singapore Air Show in 2010. So he turned up and saw many exhibitors at that event who'd all spent a lot of money on really nice stands and getting people to the event, and then saw chaos at that event where people were turning up and the meetings they're expecting to go to didn't happen. There was lots of frustration, lots of people trying to check people to an event using manual spreadsheets or trying to manage and guide people in a very manual way. And that's, out of that experience, created effectively a component of what is now the Gather platform for managing better event experiences in terms of the way you manage meetings and travel and all those good things in terms of what we do. So that's just a couple of examples of event experience, life cycle, end to end, I think, which shows that it's not just about coming here today, it's about getting here and what happens after the event. Nick, back to you.
Cool. So next one, next point, let me know when you can hear me. Is that good? Yeah. Return on experience. So again, forget ROI. ROI is quite sort of one-dimensional. Let's look at the return on the overall experience. And I guess, it's the metric that lets people sort of measure a little bit more around how people are engaging with a brand, not just about how much the brand is getting from the people out there. And again, going back to the event experience and sort of typical sort of trade show environment, there's been this huge mantra and this huge problem of build and burn in the industry, where you sort of create an experience and then it runs for a few days and then no one ever hears about it again. And even if you actually look at the really big shows, like look up CES in 2019 and try and find pictures even of really big brands' experiences in 2019, like you will really struggle to find anything at all on there about what they were doing. So you're spending millions of dollars in some cases on all these experiences, and you kind of disappear after a few weeks or a few months you're promoting it. And so the great thing about running virtual platforms, hybrid platforms, running event software is it allows you to kind of start to chip away at that sort of build and burn. And I think brands are starting to think about using these platforms a different way as well. So rather than just thinking, right, we've got a 3-day event, we'll run the virtual side of it for 3 days, increasingly people are coming and saying, you know what, can I leave this open as a sales platform for 2 months? Because I've got a great branded sort of space, I've got all my content there, I can host calls there, I can do my live streaming occasionally if I want to. So why would I turn this off? Why not just keep it running and have a venue, a virtual venue that really reflects the brand that you can then reuse and reuse? Because it seems like such a sort of missed opportunity. On the flip side, that can be used then to training. Train your internal teams, understand your products and services. If you're talking to customers about it, you should be able to use the same material to train people internally about it too. So it becomes a place you could do onboarding, you could actually look at internal meetings, internal engagement as well. And let's face it, if you're running virtual and hybrid events for your brands, for your customers, you kind of got to practice what you preach and drink your own Kool-Aid, because if you're not using it, why are you expecting other people to use it? And this is something that kind of sits at the core of the way we look at the platforms, not just the event, but how can we turn this into something that lives longer, that gets more value for your money, basically. And of course, once you're doing that, once you've got this sort of always-on sort of mentality, then you've got so much more data to play with. You're not just capturing registrations, doing a one-off, taking it off into your CRM again. You have this continuous stream of data across meetings, across content, across how people are engaging, how people are talking on the platform. You can learn from that. You can try different things, do A/B testing. Like there's a huge, huge scope to improve how things are done there. And there's a really nice quote, like a little bit of self-promotion, sorry, I have to stick it in somewhere. But working with Disney on some recent events, and this is the feedback we got, not just, yes, it was well, and yes, we had some good meetings, and yes, we had some good content there, but literally, we managed to save them time in their day to focus on the important other stuff that they do, so not have to worry about the technology, not have to worry about the thing actually working and turning on at the end of the day. So on to regulation now. We're a little bit over on time, so let's speed through and we'll get to some questions, hopefully get some opinions from you guys and go there. So Peter.
Thank you. So regulation, not the most gripping of topics, so I'll try and keep it short. I think we're all familiar with the fact that event management is all about data. So it's about people who come to events and what they want to do. And we're very much about supporting the correct use of that data. So things like GDPR compliance, all that good stuff, we do that. One of the interesting things that certainly the Gather team has been able to do that others have struggled with is we've run events successfully, hybrid and virtual events in China. So again, that's a market where it's quite difficult to get onto the white list rather than the black list. So again, if you want to know more about how to do that, we can give you some insights as to how to do that. I think being compliant is really important. I mean, I describe this probably as more as adherence rather than compliance in terms of being also very sustainable. And I'll talk very briefly now about an example on the next slide of one of our customers. So we've just completed a very successful event in Tokyo with the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. They need to come up with a new name. It's a bit wordy, that one. But basically, they're the people that are out there trying to make sure that companies are compliant and doing the right sustainable things. So they flew about 350 people into Tokyo and had about 500 people over a couple of days joining remotely. So they had a hybrid event. And we're able to run a very sustainable event and sign up new companies to comply with the sustainability goals that they're setting. So again, a good example of a hybrid event, and they've got a number of areas where they're measuring, and one of the things you can obviously focus on in terms of event management is how you manage your travel, your costs, the food related to an event, all those things. If you can remove any waste there, again, that's a good head start in terms of sustainability. So again, a key topic, and I think certainly in terms of partners, the agencies that we work closely with, some of them are very focused on sustainability as well. I think some of you will be familiar with the greenwash concept. So just because you've got a cork floor on your stand doesn't mean you're being sustainable, right? So you've got to think a lot about the bigger picture in terms of who you get there, how they get there, all those things. And I think to Nick's point, if you're creating really valuable content to use during an event, and that event lasts for a couple of days, surely you want that content to be used by people outside that event. So think about, again, the benefits of using technology to leave the platform on for longer, for people to access that content and to become more of a hub for you to share that valuable information with your community and your stakeholders.
Cool. So number 5 on the list, last one, is engagement. So it seems, again, like an obvious one, and I've got some sort of top level things to go through. So again, we talked about content. Again, make sure the content is rich. There is so much competition out there for attention from things online. Like if you're doing something hybrid or virtual, you're competing with YouTube, you're competing with Netflix, Outlook, Teams, like all of this distraction. So you've got to really like make a punchy message and deliver good content, but in a package which is going to be really high end. So rather than trying to drag things out and feed dribs and drabs of stuff, sometimes it's more effective to do a half-hour big bang and put your money there, and you've got people for half an hour, you know that, and you don't have to then sort of deal with like empty chat feeds and sort of tumbleweed on the throughout the day, and there's engaging, right? Screening. So how can you improve simple things in events? We recently worked with media clients down at the MIP events and actually looked at just simple things like sharing video in meeting rooms, which is probably one of like the most horrible things you have to do. Second only to doing polls at virtual or hybrid events like this one. If the tech works, it's great, but if not, you're chasing dongles and all this sort of stuff. So having a really slick sort of screening platform, you can see a little hint of it there, allows people to confidently share content, capture notes, go through things, and makes those little details look professional. If you're selling A-level content, which has cost, 500 million quid to make, why are you going to show it on your little laptop on a shit screen and a tiny speaker? It's not a thing. And hybrid workspace is something that increasingly we are hearing more about, you know. And I think there's a massive issue at the minute with people in offices. We're all sort of hybrid workers, you know, maybe a few of you are pure physical, but a lot of us are hybrid these days. And we kind of look at the same screen every day, and we, through Teams, through Outlook, through those tools we're using day in, day out, are kind of living in the office cubicle of the 80s, right? We've got the same four walls as everyone else around us. There's no personalization. Sure, it's hyper-optimized, like it's really efficient. We can send messages great. We can get our reminders and get our task lists. But is that a creative environment to work in? Is it going to be something that motivates people to enjoy their work? Be like, yes, I love doing this. You know, if I work in the Gherkin, I'm like, great, I love going to work, it's a cool place, I feel pride as I walk through the door. If I log in my little laptop on my kitchen table, you know, it's not quite the same effort, it's not quite the same vibe. And like it or not, that's kind of the future we live in. So, you know, how can we actually make it better? So there's a bit of a challenge, a thought exercise to you guys. You know, if you're a big brand out there and you have, say, a facilities budget, it's costing a few million quid a year, what if you spend just 1/10 of that budget on actually designing a virtual space for your hybrid workforce, which is going to engage people, which is good for their mental health, which is going to get people excited to go to work and make people proud of actually going to work. So a bit of a thought exercise, and you know, you can do a lot for a little in a virtual space compared to what you're spending for your four walls, your WeWork or whatever it is. And on that note, we've got at 3 p.m. we'll be doing a little metaverse roundtable over in the roundtables area. I'm not sure if you're able to attend those, if they're closed or not, but if not, there's a recording I'm sure you can have a look at later. And Sam at the back there will be joining, leading that panel, so that'd be really cool. We're coming back to the poll now. I'm, again, not sure if it's going to work or not. We'll see. Looking at the next slide, I think the internet's still broken. So we'll try and get it to you. Maybe we'll do it in the chat afterwards. But thank you, everyone, for paying attention. We've got 5 minutes left for questions. And for anyone who's interested as well, we've got a bit of a sort of workshop we're offering. Scan the code. It's on the website as well. But if you want to look at the attendee experience, feel free. We'll sit with you for an hour, talk about it. So let us know. Thank you.
Okay. This is working. Thank you guys for that. We've had a couple of questions through Glisser. I'm also going to, I think we've got somebody that's going to hand around the mic if anyone wants to do it the traditional way with a raised hand. Any hands initially? No? Okay, so let's go to the first one on the list. Are you seeing environmental concerns driving more virtual events rather than hybrid in-room? So is the environment and environmental concerns starting to be the driver of virtual events rather than COVID, for example?
Yeah, I think massively. I mean, you know, we talked about WCST event. Okay, they're a sustainability NGO, so it's in their interest to do hybrid. But, you know, the impact of saving on X number of flights is massive from a carbon footprint perspective. And we're increasingly seeing agencies using tools like Trace to actually calculate the impact of their events, their attendance physically, but also the virtual attendance as well. So there is a footprint to what we're doing in a virtual world. So you've got to actually look at that. You can't just say, oh, it's in the cloud, it's fine, it's not costing anything. There is a measurable amount of carbon for every live stream hour you do, for every Zoom call you do. But it is increasingly a thing. And I think it's a nice out for some brands because, you know, let's face it, it's expensive to do in-person stuff. So a lot of brands are like, you know what, I get a bigger audience, I can schedule it whenever I want to, I can repeat this. It just makes sense, and it's a nice message to have along with that with sustainability angle. So yes.
And question number 2, do you think that virtual events are on decline? Point 1, and yes or no? And then I guess how might that impact the future of event tech as we shift back towards in-room, or so do you think perhaps differently, maybe we've overshifted?
I think I wouldn't say virtual events are on the decline. I think, you know, people are starting to recognise cost of living crises and etc. That it's a great way to connect and engage. So I wouldn't say that. I think hybrid is probably the safest bet for now because people are craving to meet in person as well, as we're seeing here. But I think definitely virtual events are here to stay. It's a little bit like the home working analogy. Everybody would love to work from home all the time, but the reality is over time we're going to get back to probably a hybrid environment. So I think virtual and hybrid are definitely going to persist, and particularly if we use technology more creatively, we're going to see a lot more value from doing that, more measurable value from doing that. Do you want to add to that, Nick, at all? Or?
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. Obviously, if anything, what we're seeing is just the rebalancing of things. There's a huge surge in virtual because it's all you could do. Now you've got to balance, So, yeah, sure, there's companies like, let's say big virtual platforms, naming no names out there, who are laying people off and scaling down. But that's maybe because they were not really looking forward and seeing where the market would naturally lead once we return to in-person. So I think, the market is sensible now.
Any raised hand questions from the audience? Well, I'll go to the third on the list. No? Okay, so last question then, and it's a very broad one. How do you measure the impact of event technology? We've got a couple of minutes, but you could probably go for hours on that one.
Well, you covered it in your RI, didn't you? I think to a large extent.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a load of factors. I think what the key is every brand is going to have their own KPIs. You're all going to measure different things. If I'm doing patient technology, I'm going to learning. If I'm a bank, I want to know how much people are using my app and saving money and investing with them. So it's difficult to sort of have a catch-all term. But as you said, have technology in place end to end, then it's going to be how we put it. Sorry. When sort of tech in place, then at least you can capture the data more broadly. Then you can say, right, let's try testing this, let's try testing that. As a software company, we have... Is this better? There you go. As a software company, we don't just have a fixed set of KPIs. We say, okay, we'll look at churn and see how that works. Maybe we'll look at the average revenue per account. But it's a constant evolution, a constant learning process. So you can track things, but if you're not actually seeing that that's linked to your success, then you've got to think again. So I think there's a lot of ways to track data these days. I think what the more interesting thing is how you're using that data and getting some smart KPIs to link to that.
Well, thanks everyone, and thanks Nick and Peter for doing that. Thanks you for joining us. Please come back for the next session starting very shortly, or stay for the next session starting very shortly. And these guys, obviously, they're going to be here to take any questions if you want to speak to them directly. I'm sure they'll be hanging around, or if you guys got to stand here. No? Okay, so grab them now if you want to see them. Okay, thanks a lot, and see you at the next session.
Thank you.